One of the big things that people struggle with when they're giving up sugar is giving up bread also, because bread is one of those things that it's so deeply ingrained in our culture. And for the most part, most breads will actually spike your blood sugar and set you on that vicious cycle of sugar cravings. So what we have for you today is flax wraps. Now this recipe is fantastic because it's sugar-free, it's gluten-free, it's low in carbs, high in protein, great fats, and it's super nourishing. And they'll satisfy that sandwich craving without spiking your blood sugar. So what you do is you start off by putting organic golden flax seeds into a food processor or a high-powered blender, and you create basically a flax meal. If you don't have a high-powered blender or access to a food processor, you can actually buy flax meal ahead of time, but the benefit of grinding it yourself is there's going to actually be more nutrients. As soon as it's ground and oxygen gets access to it, it starts to oxidize and it will lose nutrients and freshness. So you grind it up until this very fine kind of powdery meal. And for every cup of flax you use, you're going to use half the amount of water. So to start, we're going to bring half a cup of water to a simmer. And once it's simmered, you remove it from the heat, put in about a half a teaspoon of salt, and then I add twice the amount of flax to the ratio of water. So we put in half a cup of water. We're now going to put in a full cup of ground flax. And this will make about 5 to 6 wraps, depending on how big you make them. And then you're just stirring it together until it makes a dough-like texture. And remember, this is off the heat. Once you have your mixture, you're going to take it out of the pot and we're going to roll it into a log. It looks like cookie dough here. A great tip to prevent it from sticking to your board that you're working on is just to dust the surface of the board with some ground flax. This is in similar terms as when you're making bread. You would dust it with flour. This, you're just putting a little ground flax down. And then depending on how big you want your wraps, you're going to slice into it with to make 5 or 6 balls. So once you slice into it, you're going to take each slice and roll it into a ball. So once you have your ball, you can then take 2 sheets of silicone baking paper. This is great. You don't have to use it. It's just going to make your life a lot easier as far as sticking and rolling it out. So once you've got your ball in between the 2 sheets, you're just going to pat it down with your hand for a little bit, and you're just going to roll it out until it's as thin as your average wrap. Make sure it's not too thick because it's not going to be easy to deal with, and if it's too thin, it's going to fall apart. So once you've got the right thickness, you just take the top layer of your silicone paper off, and then you can just use them like this. It's totally fine. You may want to, if they break in certain parts, just use bits of dough to kind of fill in the bits and pieces. And you can just use it just like that. If you want to get a little fancy, you can take a bowl and turn it upside down and just cut around it so you have perfectly round wraps, which is what Andy's done here. So now we're going to toast them slightly. You take a pan and just on medium heat, you toss in a little bit of the ground flax, and this will prevent it from sticking. If it sticks too much, you've got 2 things going on. Either your pan is too hot or your dough is too sticky. So if it's too sticky, you just want to add a little bit more flax meal around the dough when you're rolling it out. And obviously if your pan's too hot, turn it down. And then if you just lightly toast it for about a minute on each side, too long and your flax wraps aren't going to wrap very easily. So once your wraps are done, you can fill them with your favorite fillings. We're using a delicious miso hummus, which we're going to share our recipe next week, so stay tuned for that. So just place the hummus on the wraps, spread it out, and then start to layer and add in your veggies and fillings that you like. And then basically you just wrap and roll. Super simple like that. You can slice them. The wraps are fantastic. They last at the very least a week in the fridge in an airtight container. They're great that way. We haven't tried freezing them, but if you do, let us know how you go. So here you go. These are some flax wraps that can help solve the problem when you're craving bread and you don't want to spike your blood sugar. Now remember, you can put all different kinds of fillings in them to make them interesting and delicious. And in fact, if you look in the description below, I've got some ideas here for you that are not only good for you, but taste great. So I hope you enjoy these fantastic flaxseed wraps, and I'd love to hear how you go making them. So for more delicious recipes like this that won't spike your blood sugar, are super easy to prepare and absolutely delicious, click the link below to find out more about our 21-day sugar-free challenge.